how did you handle me getting made fun of? Because a lot of the time, I didn't pick up on the fact that people were being mean to me, but you did. Did you ever feel guilty for not realizing that like I was autistic? Were you ever embarrassed by me when I was a little kid, since my undiagnosed autistic behavior was very strange? Hi guys, today we're with my mom. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm Morgan's mom.
And I'm going to be asking her questions about what it was like to raise me, an autistic child. So before we get into the whole like Q&A thing, I feel like I just need to give like a quick little background so you understand like where we're coming from. So I'm the oldest child. I have 2 younger siblings. I got diagnosed with autism when I was 20 years old. Neither one of my parents are autistic. We're positive about that, but we definitely think there's maybe some like undiagnosed autism in our extended family. And yeah, so let's jump into the questions. You ready?
Sure.
Okay, so the first question is, what are some of my most notable autistic traits as a child that we now know were autistic traits?
Well, those are fun. The first one I would have to say was the fact that you did not seek out food at all.
Yeah.
As an infant, a toddler, you know, you were probably pretty underweight, and you never cried for food. The second one that I can think of is the fact that you were very socially uncomfortable when we brought you out of the house.
Yeah.
We noticed that very quickly. You were like a different kid outside the house than you were in the house. You had trouble, you know, making lasting relationships and friendships.
Yeah. I didn't get along with like anybody.
Well, you preferred to be alone.
Yeah.
You wanted to play by yourself. You did not want to, you know, play with the other
Yeah.
kids. I'm trying to think back, what was another one that we laugh at now?
Yeah. Oh, just the fact that like I didn't understand anything that was going on. Like I didn't get social cues.
She did not get social cues, and you know, my favorite thing was when, you know, she was 1 and we, you know, put on Christmas for her. She was completely unresponsive to the gifts. And
I like didn't understand it, and I was like, why are you looking at me?
She just would stare at it. There was no gleeful smile, no happiness that you could see. She just kind of stood in the middle of the room and stared at her gifts. So, you know, there were just a lot of signs like that outside the house. Would not talk to anybody outside the house.
Yeah.
She would just death stare everybody with those big brown eyes of hers.
Yeah. And everybody would be like, oh, that's just Morgan. Nothing weird to see here. She's totally normal. But then we got diagnosed with autism. So, okay, so the next question is, when did you realize that something was like wrong with me, or when did you get like concerned about me?
So I never would have termed it as really wrong with you, but you know, early on I thought there was something different about you. And most of it was socially. You know, I knew that you were a very different child outside the house than you were in the house, and it was drastic.
And you and Dad would get like really mad about it when I was little, because you would tell me to behave correctly, and like I just didn't understand. And like you guys thought I was like defiant. Yes,
we did think you were defiant because we would explain how to behave in certain circumstances over and over again, and it would never take. You would never be able to reproduce, early on at least, what we were referring to. And we definitely thought that, like, how do you not understand what we're saying?
Yeah.
And I don't think it wasn't that you didn't understand what we were saying, but I think you didn't understand
like how to imply it.
Well, when the circumstance was that you were supposed to be implying.
Yeah.
So I think you'd go outside the house and not understand that situation and not recognize the situation in which you were supposed to be smiling and saying thank you or hi or bye, or just really very simple tasks that we're asking you to do. So my concern really didn't
become like extreme.
It didn't become extreme until you were pretty much older, more, you know, middle school, high school. And I wouldn't even say it was concern. It was just, you know, you had trouble making friends. You had trouble fitting in. That was more of my concern. But I always told you, you know, just to be yourself, and that it was okay that you were socially uncomfortable, and that, you know, you and I would role play a bit to try to make those situations better for you.
When I was little, my mom knew that like I had issues like talking to people, and so she would tell me like, it's okay if you can't answer the person, smile or wave or make your body language know that like you're listening to them. And like we would practice like conversations when I was little.
Yeah, and how for Morgan to respond. The older you got, the more you went off on your own, and the more we thought that you were compensating and getting better, that you were being able to overcome these social discomforts that you had, and that you were working towards resolving them for yourself, not being with you every day and not being outside the house with you anymore. You know, we kind of lost sight of the fact that these struggles were still really on the forefront for you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we saw that when you really came home and
had my big mental breakdown.
You did. She really did. So, and that obviously for any parent would be very concerning.
Did that set off the alarm bells?
It set off the alarm bells that
there was a deeper issue.
Yeah, I always thought that there might be a deeper issue, but I was hoping that
there wasn't.
I was hoping that we were going to be able to work our way as a team through those, and it wouldn't end up being a bigger issue. So obviously at that point in time, I knew that we had come to where I had always tried
to prevent.
And
that was hitting autistic burnout. So what was it like for you when I hit autistic burnout? We now know that it was autistic burnout, but at the time, we didn't know what it was. We were just calling it like a mental health crisis. And I had to leave college and quit my sports team. Like it was rough. What was it like for you?
Well, obviously for any parent to see their child go through something so extraordinarily difficult, you know, for that child, it's painful. It's painful to watch your child struggle so difficultly. You know, we just kept putting one foot in front of the other, knowing that, you know, we were your support system and we had to stay strong, and we had to try to figure out how we could help you, help yourself, and get yourself on the right track. And at that time, we had no idea what that was or what avenue to take. I mean, it was kind of a challenging time.
All right, so the next question is, what was it like for you when I got diagnosed? Like, what was your immediate reaction?
Okay, people might find this really funny, but I think that relief was my first reaction.
Because I was in autistic burnout, and we were seeking answers desperately.
We'd been seeking answers for like a year, I'd say, and she was only declining. So to hear that it was autism, you know, felt like a relief. I didn't really need a diagnosis. Yeah. I think the diagnosis was really for you.
I needed the diagnosis. But like at first when I got diagnosed with autism, we were kind of like, autism, like we didn't know what it really was. But once it was explained to us, my parents were like, oh, that explains like your entire life. Yup, you're definitely autistic. Like, you and Dad were like going around being like, aha, we figured it out.
If you're a parent and you've ever had an aha moment, it was our aha moment, and then to the point where, you know, my husband and I were like high-fiving each other with, okay, we can do this. So, you know, it was a relief to get something, a diagnosis that now we could be working in a direction altogether. But, you know, the diagnosis didn't surprise me once I understood what autism was. It's just that I had never known exactly what it was before. Yeah.
And for them, I mean, it was like all positive, but for me, it kind of sent me into a bit of depression because my parents knew that I had these struggles my whole life and that I probably would. But like I was under the assumption that my struggles would get better, but like getting diagnosed with autism meant that they were like forever. So like it wasn't all positive to me, but my parents were running around skipping and high-fiving.
I thought with an autism diagnosis that she would then understand where her struggles came from and that would make them easier for her.
And it has now. That was like 2 years ago, so like, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's working towards that.
And I guess like a follow-up question to that is, did you ever feel guilty for not realizing that like I was autistic?
I mean, I think we've gone over this and over this, right? No, I don't think guilty is at all like the way that we felt.
And I don't think you should feel guilty.
Yeah, I think it's really all about the fact that, you know, we knew that you were struggling from early on. And so, you know, your father and I really tried to accommodate you in our household as best as possible for a lot of the things that we felt that you needed.
Yeah.
And we tried not to put undue pressure on you.
Yeah.
For things that we thought might be difficult for you to accomplish.
Yeah. Like early on you would get mad at me for things that like were autism but you didn't like realize at the time. But like in the whole grand scheme of things, like you parented me like I was autistic without knowing that I was autistic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just identified the places that we thought that you needed help.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a parent, we identified those and then tried to, you know, accommodate for those things.
I forgot to turn on the camera for this question. So let me ask it again. Okay. Do you regret anything that you did when you were parenting me now that you know that I'm autistic?
I mean, that's a hard question. I don't think I regret pretty much the way we parented you at all.
Yeah.
But I think there are incidences that I might regret and wish I could, you know, have done differently when you were very young.
Yeah.
Being autistic and being non-autistic, our communication level was not on the same path, and so
we just weren't communicating.
No, we were not communicating. So I couldn't understand why when I asked you questions, it really was ignoring me in public. When I would be speaking to you in public, you would be mute, and I just couldn't understand why you wouldn't answer me. And there were certain situations where it felt very necessary that you should have answered me for safety reasons and things like that. So those were the times that I really got upset with you, and I could not understand why you couldn't respond correctly. And I probably overreacted, and had I known you were autistic,
it would have been handled differently.
It would have been handled differently, absolutely.
There was a lot of times in like my early childhood where my parents got like really angry at me for like not responding or doing like something socially incorrect that I should have known. And like, but by the time I was like 8 years old, you guys realized like, oh, there's an issue here. Like she's not understanding. So then you like changed it. Like you identified it and were like, oh, okay, let's not yell at her about that anymore. So like it was only early on because you didn't know.
I think it was a learning curve for parents, you know, not having that label of autism. We didn't know why she couldn't catch on, but as we grew with her and we had more out of the house experiences with her, we learned to manage the new persona that we saw outside the house, which was a different persona than the one that we saw inside the house. And I think that was obviously a big learning curve for her father and I.
Okay, this is a question I've never asked you before. Were you ever embarrassed by me when I was a little kid, since my undiagnosed autistic behavior was very strange?
That's another very good question. I would have to say mostly no. Yes, really. I was so proud of you, and I knew the child that was at home. I knew the real you, so I was always so proud of you and of all your abilities. To me, you were wonderful.
But like, didn't the other parents like ever say things like, why isn't Morgan talking? Why isn't Morgan like?
You know, it's funny. I really didn't get that. I didn't get that, and this is why you probably went undiagnosed. If the other parents were talking about it, they weren't talking to me about it. And if if teachers were talking about it, they didn't talk to me about it. You know, there was, of course, Morgan shy, or Morgan just doesn't answer. It's hard to get it's hard to get a response out of Morgan.
Yeah.
But I would just laugh because I knew how hard it was to get a response out of you. It was impossible.
Yeah. I wonder, like, I feel like it's because I was so good at like art and I was so good at like sports that like my social awkwardness was often like excused. Or do you think people are just talking about me behind my back?
You know, I don't know. I always wondered.
What was it like as a parent to know that I was different and to then watch me like have to struggle?
Yeah, no, that was very difficult as a parent to watch you struggle because I knew you were struggling. I would try to make socialization easier on you. I wouldn't let you quit sports teams. You were a good athlete, and I thought that that would give you the opportunity to bond more with and have a better chance of making friendships and connections.
I feel like you just like set it up and was like, okay, go do. Like you just kind of like set it up in a way that like would make it easier, but then you like didn't like do. Like,
Well,
you backed off. You let me, like, be.
Yeah, I couldn't make the connections for you. I could only make the opportunities for you to make those connections.
Okay, how did you handle me getting made fun of? Because a lot of the time, I didn't pick up on the fact that people were being mean to me, but you did. So, like, a lot of the times, I didn't know that people were being mean to me until you told me. And, like, I still think that there was probably people being mean to me and, like, I didn't know.
That was so hard. That was so hard being a parent and watching that.
Did you know that I didn't know?
No.
You thought I was aware?
I thought that you were giving your friends always the benefit of the doubt. I always felt that you were just accepting of the way that they treated you. And sometimes I thought you didn't know.
Yeah.
Absolutely thought that you did not know sometimes. But that was the hardest thing being a parent, is watching that. Girls can be mean, and you know, I knew what was going on, and
but I didn't.
And you didn't, and I just watched you just try so hard to be included, and you weren't being.
Okay, last question before the sun goes down. We're trying to beat the sun. What is the biggest thing from your perspective that I've had to, like, overcome, like, autism related?
I really think that the thing that you're still working to overcome, and you might be taking some steps in the right direction, is reconciling the person that you are and the person that you've always wanted to be. And I don't know if it's you wanted to be that person because of the masking, that you created that persona and that's who you identified with for so long. But I see that, you know, as long as you can reconcile those two people, I think that, you know, you're gonna be good.
So I haven't overcome it yet.
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think you're working towards it, and I don't think you're there yet. But I think you're doing a great job, and, you know, like Daddy and I say, baby steps every day.
Yeah. Okay, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Did you have fun?
I had a
I had to convince her to get in front of the camera, but she did so good. Tell my mom that she did so good. Anyway, this was probably like a longer video, so if you stayed to the end, I appreciate you so much, and I hope you guys all have a good day. Bye!
Bye!